Hello, and welcome to this video on activity-based costing. So I'm going to go through an example, which is a typical exam type question. So we've got Swift Tech Limited manufactures two types of processors, the X core and the Z core. The following information is available. So X core column there, and the Z core column there. Well, the selling price per unit for X core is £50 per unit, and Z core is £65 per unit. Direct material per unit for X core is £18 per unit, and Z core is £22 per unit. Direct labour per unit, X core is £6 per unit, and Z core is £8 per unit. Monthly production now, X core is 3,000 units per month, and Z core is 5,000 units per month. Now the company applies overheads of £90,000 using activity-based costing. Now they're split between the machine setups and the quality control. So they're the cost pools, machine setups and quality control. Now the overheads per month for machine setups are £72,000, and for quality control is £18,000. So in total there, we've got £90,000. Now the cost driver, what causes the cost to be incurred? So machine setups is the number of setups, and the quality control is the number of inspections. Now the details for each product. Machine setups, product X core has got 4 setups per unit, and Z core has got 5 setups per unit. And for quality control, X core has got 2 inspections per unit, and Z core has got 5 inspections per unit. So that's all the information we're given. Now it says required, calculate the total cost per unit and the profit or loss per unit for each product. Now there's a set way of laying this out now, so I'm going to go through the layout for you. So it says calculate the total cost per unit. So we want the total cost per unit, so that's the total cost overall, and just on the next row down, I want the total cost per unit. Now the total cost is made up of your direct costs, which are direct materials and direct labour, which are total direct costs. Your overheads are made up of your machine setups, your quality control. Then we get a total cost and total cost per unit. Now then we want the profit or loss per unit. So we can know the total cost, we want the selling price per unit. If we know the selling price per unit and the total cost per unit, we can make the profit per unit, because it's the selling price per unit, subtract the total cost per unit. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to work out all of these costs now. So I've got, for direct materials, I've got work in 1. Direct labour, I've got work in 2. Machine setups, I've got work in 3. Quality control, I've got work in 4. So let's get down to direct materials then. Now, so X core, for direct materials, we're going to see how many units we had. So X core with 3,000 units, and Z core was 5,000 units. Just put in the number of units first. So Z core was 3,000 and 5,000 for Z core. Now direct materials, we know what it costs for direct materials. Let's see, go back to the question now. So X core direct materials. X core direct materials is £18. And Z core direct materials per unit were £22. So the X core direct materials is the 3,000 times the £18. And likewise, for Z core, it's the 5,000 times £22, that's £110,000. So let's go back to our little solution. So X core is 54,000 for direct materials. I'll say 54,000. And the Z core was the 110,000. So that's the direct materials. Now we want the direct labour. So I've got work in number 2 now for direct labour. So given the number of units, so X core we've got is 3,000. And Z core is 5,000. Now, direct labour per unit for X core, we need to go back to the question. So, direct labour for X core, direct labour per unit is £6. So, that's £6 per unit. And for Z core, direct labour per unit, Z core, direct labour per unit is £8. So now we could work out the direct labour for each product, X core and Z core. So X core, is 3,000 times £6, which is £18,000. And for Z core, it is the 5,000 times £8 gives us £40,000. So now we can transfer those two amounts to our solution. So direct labour for X core, we just worked out was £18,000. And direct labour for the Z core, we just worked out was £40,000. So that's our direct materials and direct labour. Now the total direct cost for X core is £72,000, and for Z core it's £150,000. Right, machine setups, you go down to working 3 now. So let's go down to working number 3. So again, we want the number of units. So X core was 3,000 units, and Z core was 5,000 units. Now, how many setups do we need for X core? So X core, the number of setups. Go back to setups, X core. 4 setups per unit. And for Z core, machine setups, is 7 setups per unit. Let's just check that one. So number of machine setups and cost of machine setups. So for Z core, number of machine setups is the 3,000 units times the 4 setups per unit, which is 12,000. And likewise for Z core, it's the 5,000 times the 7 gives us £35,000. So the total number of setups then is going to be £37,000. So 12,000 plus the 35,000. Now the cost of machine setups, I put in brackets here the little calculation. So for Z core, we got 12,000 setups out of a total of £47,000, and the cost of machine setups is £72,000. Let's just check the £72,000. There you go, the setup of £72,000 was that amount there, the overhead per month for machine setups. So let me just put that calculation in then. And that comes to £18,383. And for the other one, it's going to be 35,000 times 72,000 divided by 47,000. That comes to 53,617. So I total them both together now. We've got our £72,000. So machine setups then, we can now put those figures in. So for X core, machine setups, that's our X core column, we just worked out were 18,383. And for Z core, we just worked out were 53,617. Now we've got to do down for quality control now. So working number 4, quality control. So again, the number of units for X core and Z core. We've got 3,000 and 5,000. Now, how many inspections were there? X core were 2 and Z core were 5. So it's 2 and 5. So it's 2 and 5. So the total number of inspections now for X core will be the 3,000 times 2 per unit. And for the Z core will be 5,000 times 5 per unit, which is 25,000. So the total number of inspection overall are going to be £31,000. Now the quality control total cost there were £18,000. So I can put this in here just for a moment to show you how to do my calculation. So we're going to split the 18,000 now between the X core and the Z core. So again, I've got the little calculator on the right here. So the cost of the inspections for X core would be your 6,000 times 18,000 divided by 31,000. That comes to 3,484. And for the Z core, it would be 25,000 times 18,000 divided by 31,000. Now just check, they should come to a total of 18,000, which they do. Now you may have noticed when I was doing my calculation, to do it easier on the keyboard, I did 6,000 times 18,000 divided by 31,000. That's the same as 6,000 divided by 31,000 and then times 18,000. Right, so now we can put the quality control elements, the costs now, into our calculations. So for X core, quality control for X core, we just worked out were 3,484. And for the Z core, the second column, the second one, here we go, the Z core, we worked out was 14,516. So now we've got our total direct costs, which was direct materials plus direct labour, and the total overheads, which were the machine setups and the quality control. So the total cost overall is the total direct costs plus the total overheads, and for X core that comes to £93,860, and for Z core it's 150,000 plus 68,133, getting a total cost of 218,133. Now in the question, I'm going to total cost per unit. So we're going to convert it to units now. So the cost per unit, now X core, just let us check the number of units, was 3,000. So we're going to have the 93,867 divided by 3,000. That gives me £31.29 to 2 decimal places. And Z core, we had 5,000 units. So it's a 218,133 divided by 5,000, and that gives me £43.63 to 2 decimal places. Now they want the profit per unit as well. So we've done the first thing, the total cost per unit. We now want the profit per unit. So we need to put down the selling price. So the selling price for X core, I'll go back to the information, is £50 per unit. So I'll put £50 in there. And for Z core, the selling price per unit was £65. So to get the profit now, for X core, it's going to be 50 selling price, take away total cost of £31.29. So that's 50, take away £31.29, and the total profit per unit is £18.71. And for Z core, it's going to be the £65, take away the £43.63, give us a profit of £21.37. So in this particular case, both products have given us a profit of £18.71 for X core and £21.37 for Z core. So that's the video on a typical activity-based costing type of exam question. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching.